Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we are back with another brand new Jurassic World Rebirth release. Yes, it is that time that we finally start diving into the Sega Jurassic World Rebirth figures. I usually get a hold of these every time a new movie releases and they drop a few of these figures on us, so I'm pretty excited to see that there are actually a few this time. We've got 3 figures in the line on this set of releases, and the first one we are going to take a look at is the Spinosaurus. And you can see you've got some pretty interesting packaging here. Nice shot of the figure itself, as well as, of course, the same render that we always see of the Spino from the film. Here's another shot over here on the side of the figure. Again, another shot, a full image here on the back of the Spino, and then just the Jurassic World Rebirth logo over there, and then pretty much the same thing up there on the top, and then just standard info on the bottom. So let's pop this box open and check it out. So here is our Spino, and I must say, it is definitely a bit larger than I was expecting. So straight out of the gate, that's a pleasant surprise. Also, this has got to be one of the best Sega Jurassic World figures I have seen yet. Just like straight out of the gate, I have so much confidence in saying that. It's also heavier than I was expecting. A lot of these figures are usually fairly lightweight, whereas this one definitely has some decent weight to it. It is a really, really cool looking, well, let's go ahead and readjust the camera, but a really cool looking Spino figure. Look at the very cool pose that we have. Obviously, we've got the Spinosaurus swimming under the water. We've got like some water like bubbles and stuff popping up over here. It looks really neat, and the paint job on this is also quite nicely done. That's another thing when it comes to these figures. The paint apps are usually, I wouldn't say lackluster, but fairly basic. Whereas this one, again, it doesn't have super impressive paint apps, but for what it is, again, pretty nicely done overall. So absolutely, immediately, again, quite impressed when it comes to this one. And I have a strong feeling that this is probably going to be the best out of the 3, but I guess time will tell on that. So I'm going to go ahead and readjust the camera again, and then we'll get a closer look. So starting up in the head sculpt of the Spinosaurus, you can instantly see that that head sculpt is super spot on. They did a great job of capturing the likeness of the Spino from Rebirth there in the head sculpt, and the fine detail looks really good, really crisp overall. Absolutely fantastic looking everywhere here in the head sculpt. You of course have that nice brownish tone, kind of like a chocolate bar brown. You've got the mouth wide open. The only downside that I'm really seeing here in the head sculpt is the fact that the teeth are really sloppily painted. Like the paintwork, the tail keeps hitting the camera, but the paintwork of the teeth pretty much is all over the place, so that's one area that could definitely use some touching up. This one would be actually a fun one if you wanted to, custom paint it yourself, because the sculpt is so highly detailed. You could definitely do a lot with it. But that said, even again, the paint that we have here is really quite nice, minus the sloppiness of the paintwork of the teeth. But you've got the teeth all over the place here, of course, when it comes to the Spino with its mouth open. We can see that we do have the tongue sculpted out there. Really nice, kind of like a purplish tone for the inside of the mouth. Almost has a little bit of a glossy look in there, so it does have that slight saliva-like look. Some okay detail up there on the top of the inside of the mouth. You can see the skin stretching that as well. Looks pretty decent. Just a slight variation of color here as you move down into the lower jaw, and you can see the seam where the lower jaw is connected, but I don't think it's nearly as awkward as some other seams that you see on these figures, so that's also a plus. The eyes are painted with an orange. There is a black pupil, but it's very small in there, but that's also nicely done. As we lead back, we've got the ears sculpted out right there. Tons of skin wrinkles and folds and stuff as you lead back into the neck. You also have a tannish tone there as you move down into the lower part of the throat. Lots of very impressive skin detail in that area as well. You start to pick up some of these yellow stripes. I don't think these ones look all that great because they just almost look like they're slightly misplaced as you lead back, but they're not too terrible, I guess. But as you continue to lead back, you see the brown following along the upper side, the tan following along the lower part. There's a little inconsistencies going on here as far as like the tan meeting up with this area. As you can see, it's a little bit higher here compared to here, so I don't know if those pieces were painted separately so they don't match up perfectly, but it's not the end of the world, I guess. Very obvious seam though where the head is connected. Once the figure does arrive, the only thing that is disconnected in the packaging is the tail. You have to apply the tail. So the head was already on when I got the figure, but unfortunately you can see again, they don't really cover up the seams or anything on them. But the detailing again continues to look really nice, really crisp as you lead along. You've also got the stripe of yellow moving along the top of the dinosaur leading up into the sail. As you do lead back into the sail again, it looks really nice as far as both the paintwork and the sculpt work. You've got really nice, camera focus, but you can see some really nice fine scales as you lead up here into the sail of the Spinosaurus. You have that kind of, jagged top to the sail as well. The yellow also looks really quite nice if you ask me, moving through the sail, and again we have that nice striping pattern moving through that area, as well as again a really dark tone of color up there in the sail so that that yellow pops beautifully exactly as it does. You've got some scoots moving down here as you lead down into the lower part of the body, again leading down into the back, but down from the sail you also again have really impressive skin texture as you lead along. The scales and everything look great. They're definitely really crisp and vibrant. Very obvious seam though as you lead back into the arm of the Spinosaurus. It's like super obvious right there. But you lead down, you've got the musculature sort of displayed there. You can see the elbow sculpted out, the wrist as well. Nice skin texture the whole way down, as well as the hand again sculpted, and it looks like the nails are painted. Yes, they absolutely are. It's just hard to get in there to see, but you can see the hand claws are painted there with what appears to be a black. And then you do have a little base down here underneath, which kind of has almost just like that ocean floor sort of a look. And then you've got like some bubbles and stuff popping up there around the Spinosaurus, which is a really nice touch because it also disguises how the Spino is kind of held onto the base, and again helps to give it that swimming sort of a visual, which is really nice. The detail on the underside looks really good. We continue to have that light tone moving down here along the underside that also leads down into the undersides of the legs, which you can see leading down on like the inner thigh area, but disappearing leading into the calf. As you lead back up, you've got the rear leg as well, which you obviously can see again, the seam just like we saw on the front leg, but also the musculature is really nicely shown off. The skin stretching here is also nicely shown off. The scales again look great. You've got larger and smaller scales. The tone of brown does seem slightly different from here to here, so it may just be like the amount, like the intensity of the way that they applied it. I'm not sure. But as you move down, you've got the kneecap right there, the camera out of focus, of course, the calf muscle, but the calf muscle isn't super bulging or anything because the legs are kind of stretched out, so it's sort of like flattening the calf out a little there. You've got the shin in the front of the leg, and as you lead down into the foot sculpt, again, the really nice looking foot sculpt, the very nicely painted claws, and you've of course got webbed toes, which is really cool. Again, the claws being painted is just really awesome, and of course you even have dew claws which are painted. That's crazy. As you continue to lead out, you have more of the sails sort of leading off again down into the tail, creating that paddle-like tail that we have, more of the yellow striping, as well as the dark tone following along the back of the Spinosaurus, the brown moving along the center, and then the tan leading down here along the underside. Very crocodilian style tail to the Spinosaurus. As you lead out, that tan tone of the lower part, that kind of light brown, does taper off and disappear, and then you basically just have that kind of like the darker brown, actually, almost like a mixture of the really dark tone that you see in the upper part of the sail and tail, and then the standard brown that you have for the Spino, because you see the kind of like the standard brown here, but the darker tone there. But obviously we end the tail with a yellow tip, and I like the way that they've painted that. They've painted the yellow areas very nicely where it helps to still elaborate the scales, which is really well done. If you look at it again from what I would think is definitely the more dominant side, we did start over here, so we already saw the head of the Spinosaurus. Looks really good. You see more of the stripes leading down through the neck, again the ear and everything, lots of skin wrinkles and folds because the Spino has its head turned in this direction. As you lead back, you can see how the arm is held back into the body, again showing the swimming motion of the Spinosaurus. The bubbles are obscuring the stomach there a little bit, but obviously we can still see the detail as well as the excellent paintwork moving up into the sail. Again, the really nice looking patterning, again moving through the darker tone, the yellows, all of that stuff. Leading down to the underside, you still see the very nice looking detailing of the underside of the Spino, and again the bubbles look awesome. They really do, and they also have a little bit of like a translucent look to them, which helps them to look even more legitimate, and again perfectly disguises the way the Spino is held onto the base. And then again you have the base area here, that kind of like ocean floor area right here, which also features a little variation of color. Kind of has like a dark wash applied to it, which is really cool. And the actual base itself does have a beautiful Jurassic logo down there as well. But then you move back up, and again, you've got the legs sculpted out back here. I don't think the seam is quite as obvious on this side, but still obvious enough. You've got pretty much the same sort of a look for the legs over here, because the legs are in pretty much the same position, so you don't see a whole lot of difference. Maybe a little bit more flexing and tensing there of the calf, but that's really about it. And then you lead out into the tail, and the tail is curved in this direction. I will say the transition of this lighter tone moving away is a lot smoother on this side than it was on the first side, but looks pretty much the same for the most part as far as like the way the paintwork and everything looks. Just obviously, again, the tail bent in this direction. But that is an absolutely epic Jurassic World Rebirth Spinosaurus. That is definitely one of my favorite figures to come from Rebirth so far. As far as a size goes, for a length, you were looking at about 6¼ inches or around 16 centimeters. And then for a height, the highest point is the top of the sail, just shy of 4¾ inches or right around 12, maybe a hair under 12 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A Human Being next to our Jurassic World Rebirth Spinosaurus. And you can see, again, it does have a pretty nice size to it. It's not gigantic by no means, but it is nicely sized in the grand scheme of things. And again, a little bit bigger, I think, than I was expecting it to be. Now, obviously, when it comes to comparisons with other Rebirth Spinosaurus, this one is a very different style figure, so I don't think we really need a whole lot of comparisons here, because I don't know that they're going to do a whole lot of good. Here's one of the smaller ones out there, which is the basic Spinosaurus from Mattel, and as you can see, even that one is quite a bit larger than we see for this Sega version. Obviously, though, you will have smaller options out there, like this one, which is one of the cup topper versions of the Spinosaurus, which is a lot smaller. And you'll see the same thing as you move through with like the minis and everything. Obviously, the Mattel minis are going to be a lot smaller than we see for this one. Same deal for like the Takara Tomy, Spino, stuff like that. It's definitely going to be a bit smaller than we find for this Sega release. But if we just grab one of the more classic Sega releases, which this is the Jurassic World Dominion Rexy figure, you can see again, I guess, that's actually kind of similar in size to where, I should have expected it to be, because obviously this T-Rex is actually a little bit larger than the Sega Spino, but again, they are really cool. If you have acquired some of the Sega figures in the past, you're going to have a pretty good idea, I think, roughly of what the size is for the new Spino. But if you happen to specifically have this T-Rex, then you definitely should have a pretty good idea, because it's going to be slightly smaller. And then one final comparison that should be helpful if you are just like your standard everyday Jurassic collector, because we have a Mattel Velociraptor, which we can see is a little bit smaller than the Spinosaurus. So this brand new Sega Jurassic World Rebirth Swimming Spinosaurus is fantastic. Absolutely one of my favorite releases from them. And honestly, I think they always release super impressive stuff. I don't know that there's ever been a time when I've acquired one of these Sega Jurassic World figures that I wasn't absolutely blown away. I wish they'd actually release some Jurassic Park stuff. Like, they really missed out for the 30th anniversary, unfortunately. But this Spino is absolutely excellent, and by far one of the best Spinosaurus on the market for Jurassic World Rebirth right now. Sculpt-wise, it is honestly, I would say picture perfect. Like, it genuinely looks like they pulled it straight out of the screen and brought it here. And that's one thing that has always been really good about Sega, is the fact that their sculpts are always super screen accurate, by far some of the best out there. And I think they really did a great job on this one as well, and also capturing all of the impressive detail throughout. It looks really good when it comes to the vibrant scales or the skin wrinkles or skin stretching or the musculature. It's just everything looks really, really good on the figure. The paintwork as well is actually quite nicely done for what it is. Definitely has a really quite high quality feel overall without being super high quality. Some areas look a little questionable, like the stripes in the neck and the way the transition works on the one side of the tail for the lighter tone of the underside, as well as, of course, the sloppiness of the teeth. But they've added a good bit of variation of color. It's fairly smoothly applied and looks good overall, if you ask me. Just a few little minor areas. I also love the pose. pose. I love the base. Everything about it looks really good. They did a great job of finding a way to give the Spinosaurus a swimming pose and finding a good way to conceal the way it's held up with the really nice like air bubbles there. That's an awesome addition to the model, and in my opinion, it makes one of the best visuals of a Rebirth Spinosaurus that I've seen so far. The only other downsides for the figure would be the seams. Of course, you're going to have seams when it comes to stuff like this. If you get really picky, you could probably seal them and paint over it and everything, and of course, you'd have an excellent version of a Spinosaurus from there, but I don't really mind the seams all that much, mostly because I'm already used to it. You know, it's been that way since the beginning of the Sega figures, so it is what it is, but again, some people are definitely going to look at those seams as a negative. Either way, this is an awesome figure. If you are interested, I would say head to eBay because that's where I purchased mine. These aren't usually found anywhere here in the United States, unfortunately, so your best bet is probably eBay, and hopefully you don't have to pay a ton of money for it. But again, definitely pick it up and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.